Hey, hey. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's session of ACI, What's Next for Appraisal. We are so happy that you're here. My name is Kim Angelone. I'm the program director at ACI, overseeing our platform and product initiatives, and I'll be hosting today's conversation. I'm not going to take any time up. I want to dive right in because we have some fantastic things on the slate for you today. I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Evelyn Schellberger, who leads product for ACI's appraisal line of business. And in just a few moments, we'll also be joined by our special guest, Pete Crum, Chief Appraiser at First American Mortgage Solutions. So some of you may be ACI customers, others may be joining us from different parts of the valuations industry. Either way, we are glad that you are here. We created this series, the What's Next for Appraisal series, because a lot of changing across the industry is happening all at once. As standards are evolving, expectations are shifting, and decisions around workflows and technology are carrying more long-term impact. And what we've heard consistently is that the challenge isn't necessarily access to information. It's having a clear place to just step back, understand what's changing, and think through what comes next. And that is exactly what this series is meant to provide. So, a quick note on how today's session will work. This is a bi-weekly town hall in a listen-only format. So you are welcome to submit questions through a Q&A box at any point in time. We do have a team that is monitoring those and responding live, and we'll reserve a few questions for moderated Q&A at the end. So, to help ground today's conversation, let's spend a moment on platform context. One of the goals of this series is to connect changes in standards and practice to how workflows and technology are evolving behind the scenes. So Evelyn leads product for our appraisal line of business and works very closely at that intersection every day, where standards, workflows, and platform decisions meet real appraisal work. So Evelyn, I'll turn it over to you to walk us through how today's discussion fits into that platform context.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. I really want to spend this time talking about workbench readiness specifically and how we're thinking about supporting appraisers as UAD 3.6 moves into broad production, obviously. So from a product standpoint, readiness for us isn't about just checking a box or rushing to a date, even though those dates are important, right? The GSE set those dates for a reason and they do matter to us. But it's really about making sure that the workflows, the structure, the logic behind the platform holds up in appraisal practice and real appraisal use. And so I want to be very transparent about where we stand, where things are right now. We are still finishing up development on Workbench. We are actively still going through our testing with the GSEs as well. And, we know this work is coming together later than we originally anticipated, for sure. There have been hurdles that we are conquering for sure, but we truly appreciate the patience, the loyalty, just everything that our customers have shown us as we take the time to get this right. That's very, very, very important to us. Our focus is making sure that when appraisers need to rely on Workbench, right? That it's stable, that it's predictable, that it supports, again, like I just said, those real world appraiser scenarios, especially if standards are going to continue to evolve. So what readiness looks like in practice really for us is confidence. Confidence that when appraisers are working through a UAD 3.6 order, the workflow is clear. Everything just makes sense, right? And it's consistent for you. It's creating consistency rather than creating uncertainty and all that noise. So all that to say, if you do receive a UAD 3.6 order while we are still going through the verification process, congratulations that you got that order, but please reach out to us because we want to make sure you're supported and that you have what you need to work through that order successfully. So that's also why we're just being very deliberate in how changes are being introduced to the platform. We're staging functionality and refinement so that appraisers and their teams aren't asked to absorb everything all at once. So Workbench will continue to evolve alongside the standards without disrupting how things get done. So that's our readiness focus. It allows standards and conversations like the one we're going to have today, with Pete leading that discussion, that's going to help it to translate into real world appraisal practice over time. So really wanted to be transparent about that, and update y'all on where we are at today with that readiness.
Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Of course.
So speaking of Pete, hey, Pete.
Hello.
For today's session, we are very pleased to be joined by a very special guest. Pete Crum is the Chief Appraiser at First American Mortgage Solutions with more than 20 years of leadership experience across real estate valuation, appraisal risk governance, and regulatory compliance. Pete is a designated member of the Appraisal Institute, holding the SRA and AIRRS designations, and has worked across field appraisal, branch and regional leadership, and enterprise valuation operations. In his current role, Pete supports staff and panel appraisers nationwide with a focus on consistency, defensibility, and risk-aware decision-making as standards and market conditions continue to evolve. So what a fantastic opportunity to have him here. Pete, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Evelyn. Happy to be here. Happy to discuss this very important topic today.
We always appreciate your time. We reached out to our customers. We put it out on social media. We asked for some questions ahead of this call, and people delivered. That is for sure. So hope you don't mind, Pete, but I'm just going to dive right in and start firing away. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. All right. So from your perspective, what's important for appraisers to understand about why UAD 36 is happening now?
So I think it's really about continuing a long-term shift toward clearer, more consistent reporting and a digestible data delivery to lenders and obviously investors, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. The old forms, they really weren't capturing what's important to industry stakeholders. So now we really kind of have a better mousetrap for everybody. And I think it's kind of really also important to understand that UAD 3.6 is really a milestone in appraisal evolution. And it really solves for a lot of gaps that were identified really years ago. So probably overall, I'd say that UAD 3.6 represents really a deliberate years in the making evolution, really modernizing outdated forms to better capture what appraisers already analyze, delivering really a clearer, more consistent data package to the lenders and investors without changing the core judgment or independence of the appraiser. That's really what I would like appraisers to understand about why UAD 3.6 is happening now.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
So when let's talk about appraisal practice. So when you think about day-to-day appraisal practice, where do you expect appraisers to notice the biggest changes as UAD 3.6 starts moving into broad production?
I'd say it's really centered around structure and reporting expectations, not how appraisers analyze value, or really appraiser judgment, but really what data is expected to be captured and communicated. It really nothing changes in terms of how we analyze value, our appraisal judgment and USPAP compliance and valuation methodology. Those all remain unchanged. I would say that appraisers are going to see more clearly defined fields and expectations for how information about the subject and comparables is reported. But that's just really going to bring greater consistency to the report itself. And I think it's just really overall designed to reduce interpretation gaps downstream, meaning the lenders and investors are going to better understand what the appraiser is communicating and are going to probably have less follow-up questions. And I'd also say that for many workflows, it's going to really feel like more structured reporting up front, but less friction and fewer revisions and fewer clarification requests downstream. Admittedly though, because appraiser workflows are going to vary and by software and property type and client mix, the day-to-day impact isn't going to feel the same for everyone. But I really feel that over time, it's going to tend to feel more like refinement rather than disruption. So our process is going to be refined. We're still going to communicate much of the things and more in terms of what we use to communicate. But another kind of takeaway here is that our evaluation methodology remains unchanged.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think
That's a really good answer.
yeah, it is. I think that's key.
Thanks.
Yeah, it reduces those back end revisions, right? And I think that there's confusion, for someone that's receiving an appraisal that may not necessarily be familiar with the format, and now that is standardized, and so we're kind of taking that out of the equation. Evelyn, I guess let's kick this to you. So from a workflow perspective,
Okay.
how are you thinking about supporting appraisers through these changes?
Good question. So I think my goal with workflow is really not to make appraisers learn something new every time the industry shifts, right? Like this is a big one. This is a big shift that's happening. And Pete, you answered that last question really, really well, right? With it's not changing necessarily appraisal judgment. It's just kind of restructuring where that data goes, right? Or modernizing how we report on that data. But for us, we want to make sure that we're not making appraisers have to learn something new every time that shift happens, right? You indicated as well, reducing the friction as those shifts happen. That's the goal. A good workflow from a product standpoint should make expectations clearer, not noisier, louder. And so that's what I'm focused on. That's what we're focused on, right? Guiding users through change in a way that feels intuitive, it feels familiar. It helps them to adapt to the scenario without layering extra steps, without the mental overload, or excuse me, overhead. And if the workflow is doing its job, the appraiser isn't thinking about the system at all, right? They're just kind of flowing through it. They're able to get work done with confidence. So that's really from a workflow perspective, the purview that we're approaching things with.
And spot on. I think you hit the nail on the head there with, just trying to mitigate that confusion, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess on that topic, Pete, I'll kick this back to you. What are some of the most common areas of confusion that you're seeing or hearing about when it comes to U83.6?
So I think that one of the areas of confusion is that appraisers are under the belief that how we appraise properties is going to be different, and how we appraise properties is not going to be different. How appraisers analyze things remains the same. The biggest change, of course, is really around the reporting structure and reporting expectations. A property, in essence, has a single point in value in time. We approach that in different ways in accordance and compliance with USPAP, but we are just going to be communicating that a little bit differently now than we were, in recent years. But there's really a lot of new data points, and the report's going to look different. But the intent is it's really for clearer communication. Like I said before, less confusion downstream. And I think that the good thing is that none of the new data requirements should really be confusing. So there shouldn't be too much confusion there. They shouldn't be confusing in and of themselves. We're not changing the way that we analyze properties, of course, again, but rather the report is more comprehensive and more structured. So I think that overall confusion is going to be really kind of limited, and I think it's going to vary from appraiser to appraiser, but again, it's also going to look really a lot more like refinement than reinvention.
Yes, yeah. And I think I'll just kind of add on that. We hear a lot from appraisers about technology, right? And technology replacing the appraiser. And that's absolutely not the case. It's like you said, that appraiser valuation methodology, that doesn't change, right? We still need appraisers. It's just a matter of structuring the data and making it in a more user-friendly format, and being able to capture all of the data, because we know that there's tons of it out there in
Yeah,
the world.
we're
Yeah.
still
So
approaching the value, how do we solve the valuation problem? How do we put together that puzzle? All of those methods and techniques still apply, right? It's just going to look and feel a little bit different to the end user and to us as we're filling out the reports.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So as standards move into broad production, how would you encourage appraisers and valuations teams, because you're on both sides here, so how would you encourage appraisers and valuation teams to just think about readiness overall?
So I really think that readiness isn't about being perfect on day one, although everybody would want to be perfect on day one. I think everybody needs to, take a step back and recognize that this is a huge change to the industry. It's going to affect appraisers, it's going to affect appraisal management companies, lenders, and really everybody. And nothing is going to be perfect on day one, not for the appraiser, not for the QC folks, not for the lenders. But I think it's really all about understanding the intent and knowing where to look for guidance and also being adaptable. Appraisers, we don't need to master every single nuance immediately. Learning is going to continue well into broad production. And I think confidence is really going to grow through use. Um, we can prepare all we want, but each individual appraisal assignment that we get is always unique in and of itself. So confidence is really going to grow through use, not just through preparation.
Pete? All right, so I'm going to ask you a zinger, and I hope you're ready for it because this is a big question.
Okay.
If there's one mindset or takeaway that you would encourage appraisers to carry forward as U83.6 continues to roll out, what would it be?
I would really focus on clarity, clarity in terms of both understanding um, the requirements, really the requirements, and in how you explain the appraisal. I'd look at sample appraisals that the GSEs have provided and envision how you're going to gather and document any new data requirements. I would plan to narratively clarify anything that might not be easily understood by the end user or easily understood by checking a checkbox. There's, the addendum, if you will, is sort of going away, but there are sections or there are options in each section to add clarifying comments and you can and add your narrative. So simply checking a box sometimes doesn't cut the mustard. So you're going to want to make sure that you're clarifying things that you feel that the end user might not understand. I would also take time to understand the why, not just the what. And the what tells you where to put the information, and the why really helps you decide if you need to describe it so it's accurate, consistent, and defensible. I would, let's see here, thinking about your question a little bit more, I'd also encourage appraisers to approach the changes really thoughtfully and not reactively. And at the same time, I think we're all going to understand that we have to be sort of nimble, open-minded, flexible, and proactive. We're going to be, throwing a few curveballs over the next couple of months, and we want to just be nimble about those things and open-minded, understand that, the lenders might be facing some challenges on their side as well, and just really try to help our customers. I think, oftentimes appraisers forget that we are in a customer service industry and our lenders are our customers and we want to help them as best as possible. So we're going to need to be a little bit open-minded and flexible as as things progress in broad production. And then, lastly, I'd say that, again, I just remind appraisers that it doesn't change how appraisers approach and think about value. It's really about modernize the reporting vehicle and communicating the data appraisers already have access to.
Yeah, I second, third, fourth, all of the things that I was, I think I really like what you said too, going back about making sure that we're approaching the changes thoughtfully and not reactively. That stuck with me as soon as you said that, because we do get a lot of feedback that's submitted through even the feedback modal, right? Shameless plug, always got to put that in there. But that is, well, in 2.6, I would do this. That's not here in this form. And so I agree, and I absolutely have appreciation for the legacy, forms and reports and what was done there. But I could not echo that sentiment any louder of really focusing on being nimble and open-minded and flexible and trying it right? Trying it all the way through before thinking that it's not going to work and why did this happen, and all of the kind of negative narratives that could easily be put together on such a big change. It's easy to say, like, I don't like this. This is huge. It's big. It's different. No thanks. But I think I love the way that you worded that, and I also agree. We've said it a couple times now. I think the data is there. Appraisers constantly tell us that we have the data. It's my data. I've got it. And now just how you report on it is a little bit different and hopefully better. A little bit more work on the front end maybe, but I think that in the end, it's really going to help make the process easier.
Yeah, I would say that you spoke about the appraisers who are asking, why isn't this there? Or I used to do it this way, and now I don't see that anymore. I would just remind to all the appraisers listening, the GSEs and really a lot of stakeholders put a lot of time, thought, and effort into designing these forms and really mandated to the forms providers what the forms need to look like. So any forms provider doesn't necessarily have control of whether or not a checkbox appears or doesn't appear on the form. They're abiding by what they have to create their forms with what was mandated to them by the GSEs and other stakeholders. So they might just not be able to put what used to be there anymore.
And I think that's key to what you said about being nimble. And Evelyn, you said it as well. And technology is advancing. It's continuing to grow. We're just now stepping into this UAD 36 new data format. And as it continues to get out there and appraisers are completing assignments using this new data, I am sure that it is going to continue to change and evolve, as the GSEs are collecting feedback. So absolutely, it's very important to be nimble right now and continue to be open-minded and just kind of roll with the punches. Yeah, because who knows? Who knows what technology is going to look like this time next year? We could all be not here, and we are AI versions of ourselves doing this podcast.
Not a chance.
I watched a terrifying AI video last night. I'll keep that one to myself, though.
Are you just going to put that out there, Pete, and then not follow up on it?
It went very deep down. I went very deep down the AI rabbit hole last night. But actually, I love a lot of the AI tools and things that have come out lately, and I think that is going to be incorporated in a lot of our practices as we move into the future, and it's going to be kind of really great, actually.
Yeah, I agree. And who knows where it'll land, if it ever lands, right? It could just continue to be something that's a part of our day-to-day lives. All right, so I do want to take a couple of moments here to give the audience an opportunity for some live Q&A. And we have tons of questions that are coming in, but our team did flag a couple that I would like to pose out to our guest. First, one concern I keep hearing from other appraisers is whether all this additional structure is going to slow us down. We hear that so much too, I think, on our side as well. So Pete, from your perspective, how should appraisers think about efficiency as reporting evolves under UAD 36? And Evelyn, feel free to chime on this one as well.
Sure.
Yes, we're all going to have an adjustment period, and I think it's probably going to be largely short term, but it's certainly fair to expect a short term adjustment period. Anytime any type of reporting changes, anytime we have changes in our lives in general, it takes a little bit of time to adjust. But I think it's important to remind ourselves that the change in the structure doesn't automatically mean things are going to be slower. UAD 3.6 it's designed to reduce ambiguity, and that's really one of the biggest drivers of inefficiency in appraisal work today. I would say a lot of reports that I look at personally are very ambiguous. Things aren't where you would expect them to be. You have to hunt through the report and hope that it's in there, do keyword searches, all sorts of things. But it's designed to reduce ambiguity, and I think that's going to help things when we think of downstream and aftershocks of after we deliver our report. So clear expectations up front typically kind of mean fewer follow-up questions and fewer revisions and less rework after delivery. So I think that is going to be one place where we sort of gain, if you will. Um, and so just in daily appraisal practice, I would say that, really what this means is a little more intention early on, um, means
Mhm.
translates into time savings on the back end.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yes, we get the question often. This new form is going to take, not even a question, just statements, right? This new one's going to take twice as long. There's so many more fields. And I think, to put it another way, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing here, but it does look that way at a first glance, right? It's brand new. Again, if you haven't been going through and doing, whether it's the continuing education course to learn about it, whether it's the GSE 4-hour course, whether you're in your software, right, testing some of these things and creating some reports, that repetition and that constant, practice in there, going to get that confidence, is going to get the structure set up in a way that's going to make it to where it's not taking longer every time. The front end, sure, it's new, right? And so I think at first glance, yeah, there's a lot of new info, but as we've said, it's just restructured in a different format. So it's going to pay off in the
Yeah.
long run.
I'm going to throw in one more thing here, is that, appraisers, should understand what their time is worth and should charge accordingly for their time. Does that mean everybody needs to change their prices and all sorts of things like that immediately? No, but um, if it's taken an appraiser longer, they may need to think about in their practice whether or not a fee adjustment needs to be made to these new products. And that's for everybody to decide on their own. It's a complete business decision and whatnot, but you know, our time is worth something.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. All right, Pete. So we have just a couple of moments left. I do have one more question, which is if you had one piece of advice to appraisers who are trying to sort through all of this information that's out there right now, what would you tell them to focus on first?
So, well, the good news is that a lot of the appraisers that I've talked to and speak with, they've already sorted through the information. They've already developed a clear game plan. So a lot of appraisers are really sort of waiting for their first order. They've got things pretty well sorted out. But if you're one of those appraisers who hasn't, I would start by focusing on official GSE training and in those materials that they've provided, and you're taking those in. Some of the top ones that I would suggest looking at are the industry training for the new industry training for the new UAD and new URAR. I would also suggest that they take a peek at UAD inspection and reporting tips. And then also there is a UAD 3.6 frequently asked questions document. I think they're on both websites, Fannie and
Mhm.
Freddie, but those would be some great documents to look at. I'd also really recommend that appraisers take advantage of education. Most major CE providers now offer pretty solid courses that walk through the changes in a pretty practical way, and of course, those are for the most part eligible for continuing education credit.
Thank you, sir. All right, one more quick question. Are you hiring? Are you hiring for staff appraisers by chance?
Yes, we are actually. So we're hiring for staff appraisers in select markets throughout the United States. If that's something that interests anybody, you can go to careers.firstam.com. That's careers.firstam.com and just type in appraiser for your keyword search, and you'll find all of the areas that we're hiring throughout the United States. But our appraisal management company is also recruiting panel appraisers in several markets throughout the United States. If you're looking for a little bit more information there, you can go to that's amp.firstam.com. Again, amp.firstam.com. Once you get there, just scroll down to the bottom of the page. There's a little red box and it says, looking to join our panel, join here. And if you're looking to join our panel, you can go ahead and fill out that information.
Nice, thank you. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I want to thank Pete. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your perspective. We appreciate you helping bring clarity to how U83.6 fits into real world appraisal practice. As well as thank you to everyone who joined and submitted questions. The engagement today, it really reinforces why conversations like this are important as these standards continue to evolve. If any questions come up after today, or if you have topics that you want us to cover in future sessions, please feel free to send those to workbench@aciweb.com. Our next What's Next for Appraisal session will be on February 5th, and we will shift focus into Workbench in practice. I know you guys have been waiting for this. So Evelyn will lead that conversation, just walking through core workflows, what is ready today, with a focus on how Workbench supports day-to-day appraisal work. So thanks again for spending time with us. We appreciate you being a part of these conversations and look forward to continuing this series with you on February 5th. And if you are in any of those areas that are going to be impacted by this storm, please stay safe, stay warm, get your Jennies going, or if you're like Evelyn, get your Henny, whatever you need to stay warm. But thanks for being here, guys.
Stay warm. Thank you, Evelyn. Thanks, Kimberly. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate y'all. Bye.